Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming here today. This is an honor for me. It's the first time I've ever testified before a committee of a state legislature. I've done a few congressional and Senate hearings, but never a state legislature, so this is a big day for me, so thank you for that. I want to talk about the Convention of the States resolution as someone who, when the idea first came about 10 years ago, I was not a supporter. I had some concerns. I'd never heard of an Article 5 Convention of the States. It was something new, something I was not familiar with, and wasn't sure that it was something that was necessary. The last 10 years have convinced me that was not a wise decision. I've done the homework in actually trying to understand what the Convention of the States was, why it was put in the Constitution. It was put in by our founders. I would say as sort of the last resort. When power was starting to concentrate as they thought it would, because it always has in the history of nation states, started to concentrate in a central authority, and more importantly, when it started to concentrate in one person, that this was an opportunity for you, for the people who are closer to the people, to stand up against an authoritarian Washington and push back and give us an opportunity to remove some of that power and put it back where it belonged under the original Constitution at the state legislature or with the people. And I think what we've seen, I've always seen this concentration of power when I was in Washington, so Washington getting bigger and more powerful and doing more things. Here's the reason that sort of sent me over the edge, and that is now I see it in both parties. I hear Democrats say all the time about they're concerned about the authoritarian president. And they talk about Donald Trump and he's an authoritarian, and they're worried about this other authoritarian. And so you hear authoritarianism all the time, now from both parties. And there's truth in it. You're seeing executive orders and rulemaking and things that are constantly being challenged before the Supreme Court. Why? Because they're extending their executive authority and doing things that are outside of its purview. The Supreme Court slaps a few down, a few it doesn't. But the reality is Congress has become incapable of governing. They don't pass anything. They can't agree on anything. And so power continues to accumulate within the presidency. And so I speak to both parties when I say, don't you want the opportunity to be able to stop an authoritarian type presidency from happening by pulling some of this authority out of Washington and putting it back into the hands of where our founders intended it? And that's what Article 5 was intended to do. If you look at both sides of the aisle, you see both bases of the party, which is now the vast majority of Americans, who are upset, who feel strained and stressed of the division in this country, and that they feel helpless or powerless to do something. Imagine a convention of the states where every state is able to come together and on national television debate what our Constitution should be, what the limits of power should be in Washington, who should really be deciding education policy or health policy. Right now, you have a public that is angry and wants to focus on something. How about focusing on something constructive that the founders laid in place as an avenue for that outrage? An avenue for us to be able to, in a positive way, change and restructure some of the powers within Washington. And again, every state would have a vote. You would have the opportunity to send delegation there and to be able to have, I'm sure would be a nationally televised convention that would educate our country as to who we are and what we're all about. I think this is a tremendous opportunity, and you are the fail-safe. You here in the state legislature. The founders trusted you with this power. They trusted you with the power to say, Washington, okay, we need to have a check. We need to do something here to rebalance the equation that's gotten out of control. And so I hope you understand how serious this is and the opportunity that before you to do something that candidly, of all the things you're ever going to do as a state legislature, will have a much more profound impact on the country than anything else you've ever done. And that's a great challenge, but it's a great opportunity at a time when the country's divided. This country is divided, and my final point would be this. The reason our country was able to get along for so long is because we were divided. States are very different. California is very different than Ohio, and Louisiana is very different than Massachusetts. How do we get along? Because we have federalism, because we have communities that people can live where they want to live, where they feel very comfortable living there. When power gets concentrated in Washington and Washington tries to tell everybody that you have to live by the values of Washington, or whether it's the values of rural Ohio or it's the values of New York City, whether the Democrats or Republicans are in charge, no one wants to be told that everybody has to live the same way. That's what we're hearing. So how do you fix that? Federalism. And how does federalism happen? Limit the power of the federal government so they don't have the power to tell everybody they have to live by the rules of California or they have to live by the rules of Wyoming. That's the answer. And you have the power right here in Ohio to do it. And that's what I would encourage you to do. I think it's a gift the founders gave you. It's a package that's never been unwrapped, but it's one that's time has come.
Thank you. Representative Peters.